Weiss. I've been a physical therapist for 30 years. I actually invented a type of a physical therapy treatment that I call proprioceptive rehabilitation. And recently we just celebrated our clinics seeing our 10,000th patient with proprioceptive rehab.
What got you started at looking at this problem?
It's a funny story. So I had been a physical therapist probably for close to 18 years. And, you know, when I went to PT school, they taught us neurology. They taught us a type of treatment called PNF, which is consistently still done in physical therapy schools. Learned a lot of strength training, balance training, and I really thought I had a good understanding of how to treat a patient, say, who had Parkinson's disease or with a stroke. I knew how to rehabilitate them. And I had a patient who happened to be a medical doctor. She was a psychiatrist, and she had the early symptoms of Parkinson's disease. And she came to me and she asked me to give her therapy, and I did. And after 2 sessions, she goes, "I'm not going to come back." And I said, "Why?" And then she goes, "You know, you're really nice, but you're providing the exact same treatment that every other therapist I've been to has done. I've been to 6 other therapists. I really think you can do better." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "You know, have you looked at the latest research about Parkinson's and what works?" And I told her, "Yeah, of course I have," but I hadn't. And she said, "You know, you really should just look at it. And why don't you look at it and just get back to me?" And I remember going home that day, taking her advice and looking at some studies. And the first study I found was one about how Tai Chi is more effective than physical therapy for someone who has Parkinson's. And I was really upset at reading that article. I thought, oh my gosh, you know, am I living a lie? Am I doing the wrong thing? You know, I'm doing what every other therapist I know does. I'd worked at some pretty big rehabilitation centers at that point, and I knew what they were doing was what I was providing to her. And when I started looking at more articles, I realized that she was right, that there really had been some innovations in the research as to what was more effective. And that's when I started to realize that what I was providing wasn't really the best therapy. And that occurred in 2008. And so from 2008 till now, I've been developing what's now called proprioceptive rehabilitation as a more effective way for therapists to treat movement disorders.
What was the standard treatment?
So what was being done and what I was doing, besides just the basic balance training, was I was doing things like having the patient practice walking in a hallway, so level ground walking. I might put them on a treadmill and have them practice walking fast on a treadmill. I was having people do a lot of strength training because I really believe that the key back then, that the key to stability was strength, that the reason these people are falling is because they're weak. And I also was doing what's called static balance training. So I would have them stand on a balance disc or stand on a balance beam and just try to hold their balance. And really, this is what most therapists today are doing for balance training. When they see a client that had a stroke or who has Parkinson's disease or even a geriatric patient that's falling a lot, typically that's the standard treatment, a combination of strength training, static balance training, and level ground walking.
So what led you to do something different with your training?
Well, that was the thing. You know, I was doing really what was standard physical therapy for balance. And what the research said was all of those things were not just ineffective, they actually could make a patient worse. There are articles that said that having a patient walk quickly on level ground or walk quickly on a treadmill actually led to more falls. That having someone focus on strength training was not only ineffective, but it actually could cause more problems because it was wasting that crucial energy that the client had on something that just wasn't going to work. Really, what I realized was there needed to be a totally new approach for therapy for these types of problems. And so that's what proprioceptive rehabilitation is. The basic principle is that you use balance challenge the same way that if you have a patient that has a strength loss, you know that you're going to do strength training. You're going to use machines, you're going to use free weights, you're going to do certain amount of sets and reps, and you're going to do certain exercises as they get stronger. And as they get stronger and stronger, your weights increase, the resistance increases, and you have a really clear understanding as a therapist of how to improve strength. This allows someone to improve balance, to rehabilitate movement in the same sense, where it's systematic and progressive. So what I did was came up with 300 different activities that I found to be very effective in improving balance. And all of these activities have one thing in common. They all cause falls. I have people do things like walk backwards, step sideways, stand on one leg, bounce a ball while they're walking backwards on a treadmill, all things that are difficult to do for the average person, and especially someone with a movement disorder. And what that does is it challenges their balance, and it forces their brain not only to relearn those balance programs, but also to relearn how to prevent a fall in those situations. So what proprioceptive rehabilitation does is it allows the therapist to systematically improve the patient as they progressively gain more balance. And there really is no other approach that's ever been, there really is no other approach like this. As far as I've seen, no therapy school, no course has ever really addressed this problem in this way. What proprioceptive rehabilitation does is it gives the therapist all the tools they need to systematically approach a patient. And it was difficult for me to develop this because when I first learned it myself, my first instinct was, oh, look at what I'm not doing and everybody else must be doing. The more I read those articles, the more I was at first convinced, oh my gosh, I'm so behind. Every other therapist in the world must have seen these articles and they're doing this correct way of doing it. They're doing balance challenge. And here I am, 20 years, 30 years in the past. But that's not the case. I've talked to therapists that worked at some of the top rehabilitation centers around the world. And what I've learned is there is a push at some of the most innovative centers to work towards what they call functional challenge training. And what that means is taking more functional approach to rehabilitation. So instead of having someone lift weights, have them do something like wash the dishes or change their clothes. Make the activities more functional. But really, my development, my proprioceptive rehabilitation takes it a step further. What we're doing is breaking down activities into the most challenging forms of it. So standing on one leg and then stepping backwards, trying to hold something while you're turning. So breaking down these into 300 different activities and then deciding with each patient what level they're at, which activities they're not able to do, and then starting with the easiest one and then just progressing up through the most difficult. And in that way, you can deliver rehabilitation to someone with a movement disorder or a balance problem or serious amount of falls. You can deliver to them a program that will progressively get them better. And it works. We've seen, now 10,000 clients with this program, and I've seen it work on a daily basis.
I heard that this rehabilitation can also deal with dizziness.
Yes, actually that's something that came about after I had developed the program. I was actually working with a ear, nose, and throat doctor that specializes in vestibular problems in Hawaii. And he had referred me a few patients that had what he called persistent vertigo. So there's two kinds of vertigo. There's central vertigo and there's central and peripheral vertigo. So peripheral is the one that people talk about the most. That's the one that affects the inner ear. And sometimes people think of it as crystals that get out of place. And there's all sorts of techniques that we all know can make a significant improvement in peripheral vertigo. The problem is that's only about 20% of the time that someone has vertigo, it's a peripheral problem. The rest of the time, it is either a medication problem or a metabolic problem or a central problem. Central being something wrong with the brain. And so these patients that he was sending me, they had central vertigo. And what we discovered was that not only does proprioceptive rehabilitation help those patients, but it led me to develop an exercise, sort of a technique that actually gets rid of central vertigo. And what it does is it actually helps central vertigo in three ways. The first, which was the one that we all thought was the most likely, was it helps through something called habituation. If you get central vertigo, it means that you're just moving through your day, you're walking around, and all of a sudden you just get this dizziness spell that just sort of attacks you. And what we thought is by introducing a stimulus that causes that dizziness often enough that the person would just get used to the dizziness and it wouldn't bother them so much. And that's called habituation. But what we found was that doing this exercise that I developed, that actually helps someone rehabilitate their proprioception. That central vertigo happens because there's a proprioceptive loss. Literally, the person's walking through their day and all of a sudden they glance at something and they lose track of where they are. There's a part of your brain that always knows where you are in space. Like every minute of the day, you don't have to use your vision. You just know where you are. You have a sense that you're sitting here, you're standing here, you're moving here. When you have central vertigo, what's happened is the part of your brain that's aware of where you are in space suddenly is missing because of brain damage, because either a small stroke, a concussion, some type of brain damage damages that part of the brain, and you lose track of where you are. But it doesn't affect you all the time. If you're sitting or you're touching something, you don't have this problem. But the minute you're standing on your own and you glance at something or you change your focus, that's when the problem comes out. And what we learned was that by doing this change of focus training that we learn to do, that actually rehabilitates it, and the person can relearn that proprioceptive sense. There have been studies that have shown that you can redevelop proprioception after you've lost it. And what we believe is this technique does just that. It helps someone relearn their proprioceptive sense. And when you combine that with balance challenge training, it can eliminate that dizziness that so many people get. There are estimates that 80% of the people that complain of dizziness, and many of these people are seniors, they're geriatric people that might have had strokes or falls or concussions, they're experiencing dizziness every day of their life. And what we found is that this technique combined with proprioceptive rehabilitation can cure it.
Do you ever see this being applied on a larger scale?
I've dreamed of that. Many people have asked me to try to take this to a bigger level. They've seen how well it works, and they say, why aren't you doing this on a larger scale? I'm a simple person, and I've learned that this is a really challenging problem, is to try to deliver this to everybody. At first, I thought I would franchise the idea. I thought I would just open a bunch of offices, and I realized that is so much work, and it's just not something that I'm going to be able to accomplish. So I actually have tried two things. One is I built an education system. So I have a school that's called the Neuroelastic Institute, and that teaches therapists and trainers proprioceptive rehabilitation. And I've put a lot of energy into creating a course that any physical therapist, that any personal trainer can take. It takes about 24 hours of training, and you can learn all of the techniques that we developed in the clinic to work with clients, to work with patients, and help them actually effectively deliver proprioceptive rehabilitation for people that have ataxia, people with strokes, people with Parkinson's disease, even just geriatric patients that are falling. And then also I started having a YouTube channel. And in that YouTube channel, I basically reach millions of people. I think there's about 2 million views a month on my YouTube channel. And that's helped a lot of people. And it's fun because of the comments. When I first started doing this, I had no idea that it would reach so many people. And then, like many people that have YouTube channels, something I did went viral, and I'm like, oh, this is really something. And now for the last year and a half, I've had the YouTube channel, and I don't even know how many views it has, but it's amazing to see the comments from around the world of all the people that have thanked me for helping them with their balance. And so through that channel, I provide tips for the public, directly to the public, on how to improve their balance, how to prevent falling, how to rehabilitate from strokes, from Parkinson's disease. And I've really enjoyed that. And I think it's reached a lot of people.
That's great. And that's a good start. And then from there, they can go to the website?
Yeah, the website is really geared more towards physical therapists or personal trainers who want to get the course information. And what I'm hoping really is that the people I'm reaching on YouTube, that they have local physical therapists, that they have local personal trainers, that they would like to get this training with some help, and that they can encourage them to go and sign up for the course. The physical therapy course, the main course is about a $270 course. They can get CEUs in most of the 50 states for taking that training. And I really have put a lot of effort in that course. Believe it or not, that course took 3 years to develop and lots of trial and error, and it's a unique course in the way it delivers the information and the way I do the instruction, but it's sort of a fully multimedia course, and I think it's definitely worth the price for therapists who have to get continuing education. One quick note, if you like this video and you would like to find a therapist or trainer to help you do exercises like the ones in this video, if you would like to find a trainer or physical therapist that can do this type of rehabilitation, please direct them to my website, www.proprioceptiverehab.com. This website has links to courses that I've designed for physical therapists and for trainers to help them learn these techniques.